Today I wanted to dive into the topic of accountability, and more specifically, how prosecutors are really not held accountable for when they have prosecutorial misconduct or they do things unethically during a trial, and innocent people are then sent to prison because of their efforts to influence things in a negative way and a shady way, and a way that's just not representative of somebody who's a member of a bar association or somebody who's in such a position of power. And there should be accountability for that. And it's something that I just couldn't, understand as I was going through this last trial. And just in general, when you see things happening that are not right, and you see lies happening, and you see witnesses being used that that the government knows that they're lying, but yet they use them anyway, and there's really no price to pay for that. There's really no risk involved. They could do all these tactics, implement all these moves, and if it goes south, there's no repercussions for it. And if it goes positive for them, they get a conviction based on doing things in a manner that should not be allowed. And if it is done in ways that are not up to the standard of the law or of the justice system, there's no price to pay, so to speak, if these things come to light. And I was researching it a bit, and I noticed that obviously I'm not the only one who sees that as a problem. I mean, there's countless articles, and there's actually petitions going out. And I started diving in a little, and one that I'm going to go over a few that had some good information in it, and I'll paraphrase not to bore everybody from just reading, but I'll read certain sections that I think are directly related. But one article I liked that appealed to me, it was titled, "Why Don't Prosecutors Get Disciplined?" And it was written by Parker Yesko, Yesko. And this was November 18th, 2018. And there's a few things on how it almost evolved. Back in 1935, there was a ruling in Berger versus the United States where the Supreme Court broadly defined how a prosecutor should behave. And it says prosecutors enforce the law, but they're not above it, or at least they're not supposed to be. And, that's what it's supposed to be, and what happens are two different elements. And the article goes on to say, he may prosecute with earnestness and vigor. Indeed, he should do so. But while he may strike hard blows, he is not at liberty to strike foul ones. It is as much his duty to refrain from improper methods calculated to produce a wrongful conviction as it is to use every legitimate means to bring about a just one. And that's really the way it should go. If you have the evidence, you have the supporting documentation or supporting testimony to back it up, try it, and try it with passion, and try it with intelligence, but try it properly. Don't do anything that's unjust to get that conviction just because you want to win. If the evidence is there, the evidence is there. If it's not there and you're forcing it, well, that may be the issue right there alone. If you're trying to pull things from thin air to make them work, that's where character comes into place. That may be a position where the prosecutor has to look at everything and say, well, this case really isn't here. Even though it was presented to me, there's really not a guilty party that I'm dealing with. It's too hard to make this person guilty. So they're obviously not guilty, so why would I go forward with that? Now, I know that's wishful thinking, but that's really the way it should play out. I know normally, they get a case, they put it in front of them, and they're going to do whatever they can to get that conviction. And I'm sure there's exceptions to that, but I have not seen that. I'm sure there are the ones who do have a case where they know they're dealing with somebody innocent, and they decide not to prosecute. But unfortunately, I feel that's the rarity. And then, it all ties into accountability. I mean, I'm going to give this statistic, which I found interesting to say the least. And this is all the way back from 2003. A 2003 report by the Center for Public Integrity identified 2012 cases across the United States since 1970 in which a judge reversed a conviction, reduced a sentence, or dismissed charges, at least in part because of prosecutorial misconduct. The investigation found that only 44 cases of the misconduct resulted in any kind of disciplinary review of the prosecutor. So from that study back in 2003, there was over 2,000 cases where they did find prosecutorial misconduct, and yet only 44 cases resulted in any kind of disciplinary action, or even review for that matter. So it was basically, well, yes, there was misconduct, but nothing's going to be done about it. So somebody's life was ruined, and there was no price to pay on the prosecution end. And that doesn't make any sense. I mean, again, it all goes back